Imagine you're an ancient Egyptian royal embalmer, your hands trembling as you stand over the pharaoh's beloved wife on that icy marble slab in the dim torchlight of the sacred chamber. But this isn't your standard mummification ritual, oh no. The high priests have whispered orders that shatter every divine law you've devoted your life to upholding. And the twisted reason behind it. It'll send ice through your veins, making you question if the gods themselves have gone mad. This isn't some spooky bedtime story cooked up for thrills. This was the gritty, everyday nightmare in ancient Egypt. A civilization where intimate acts were so outrageously extreme, they'd leave today's therapists speechless. You picture ancient Egypt as a land of dazzling gold treasures, towering pyramids that pierce the sky, and pharaohs striding like gods among men. Buckle up, because here's the raw truth they gloss over in those glossy history books and museum tours. The ancient Egyptians dove headfirst into sexual practices so wild and boundary-pushing that when Victorian archaeologists stumbled upon the evidence, they panicked and buried it deep. Think royal children enduring unspeakable abuse at the hands of their own blood relatives. Imagine religious festivals exploding into chaotic, week-long whirlwinds of violence, intoxication, and unchecked sexual frenzy. What I'm about to lay out for you will shatter every romantic notion you hold about this legendary empire. Can you handle it? The real scoop on Egyptian intimate life is so profoundly disturbing that global museums conspired to keep it under wraps for more than a century. Spanning from around 3100 BCE to 30 BCE, nestled along the life-giving Nile's verdant banks, the Egyptians wove sexuality into a tapestry of cosmic mastery, godly authority, and ruthless political maneuvering. It went way beyond mere pleasure or simple rituals. This was about harnessing raw sexual energy to command the universe itself, ensuring divine favor and dominating rivals through the most personal of power plays. Pharaohs weren't just earthly rulers, they were incarnate deities, their bedroom prowess thought to directly influence the Nile's annual floods, the bounty of harvests, and the very heartbeat of Egyptian society. Imagine the crushing weight on their shoulders. To affirm their superhuman virility, they orchestrated ever more extravagant and extreme demonstrations, pushing boundaries that would make modern eyes widen in disbelief. Where's the proof, you ask? It's etched in temple walls that casual tourists breeze past without a second glance, scribbled on fragile papyrus scrolls deemed too explicit for public exhibits, and unearthed in artifacts that prudish Victorian scholars either shattered in horror or squirreled away in locked vaults. Back in the 1800s, when these intrepid explorers first cracked open tombs and temples revealing graphic sexual scenes, their buttoned-up sensibilities couldn't cope. They destroyed, censored, or hid the lot to preserve decency. In Egyptian worldview, sexual vitality was synonymous with cosmic force. Every intimate encounter, a direct line to the divine, each climax, a sacred utterance to the gods, specific positions, literal forms of prayer invoking fertility and renewal. This fused worship and desire so seamlessly that lines between holy rites and personal ecstasy vanished entirely, creating a society where sex permeated every layer of existence, from palace intrigues to peasant fields. But oh, the shadowy underbelly of this philosophy. Children from noble lineages were ensnared in a web where their young bodies became vessels for religious duty, treated as communal property rather than innocent souls. Household slaves, particularly the vulnerable young, endured routine exploitation that wasn't merely overlooked, but enshrined as a spiritual imperative. And when nature rebelled, when the Nile refused to swell or crops withered, these practices spiraled into frantic, violent desperation to appease angry deities. The revelation that flipped Egyptology on its head didn't come from a glamorous pyramid raid, but a hushed 1925 laboratory analysis. Howard Carter's team, fresh from Tutankhamun's tomb, scrutinized the boy king's mummy with emerging tech and uncovered a chilling anomaly. His genitals appeared altered, not by decay but deliberate post-mortem intervention. Clean incisions suggested skilled hands at work during embalming, sparking whispers of ritual modification. Tutankhamun wasn't an outlier. As X-rays and scans probed more royal mummies, a pattern of genital tampering emerged across dynasties. Some showed full castration, others insertions of symbolic materials, like gold or resins, to enhance eternal potency. The most gut-wrenching? An unnamed 18th dynasty prince's remains bore scars indicating the procedure occurred while he still drew breath. Bone regrowth and tissue trauma painting a picture of agonizing live ritual sacrifice for divine perfection. Suddenly, cryptic ancient texts snapped into horrifying focus. Passages about refining the deceased for afterlife bliss, guidelines for bodily alterations to guarantee seamless godly service, and spells ensuring the spirit's unimpeded function in the eternal realm. Mind-bending, right? If they routinely reshaped the dead's most private parts, what does that reveal about their living attitudes towards sexuality and the human form? Were these tweaks strictly after death, or echoes of brutal customs inflicted on the breathing? Yet the deepest cover-up wasn't ancient at all. It was modern. Victorian archaeologists didn't merely overlook steamy finds, they waged a campaign of suppression. Explicit carvings, chiseled away or plastered over, suggestive artifacts, banished to private collections or outright pulverized. Official dig reports were sanitized, omitting anything that clashed with their era's moral code. For generations, Egypt's sensual undercurrents stayed veiled not by pharaonic secrecy, but by 19th-century British and European shame that recoiled from the unvarnished truth. Expanding on this, consider the broader sexual control apparatus, a rigid hierarchy dictating every whisper of intimate life. At the pinnacle sat pharaohs, their virility a national security matter, with public displays reinforcing their god-king status. Nobles and clergy scrambled below, compelled to mirror this through elaborate rituals proving their elite worth. At the base, enslaved domestics, with children especially coveted for their pure essence, subjected to abuses framed as pious necessities. Royal heirs faced a particularly harrowing destiny. Historical papyri detail how affluent families consecrated their offspring to temples from tender ages, initiating them into sexual roles as early as 6 or 7. These innocents were indoctrinated that their flesh served the gods alone, not their own wills. Training regimens were merciless, mastering intricate poses drawn from fertility myths, techniques to extend ecstasy for hours-long ceremonies, and mental dissociation to endure without breaking. Medical records on papyrus, like the Ebers and Kahun texts, chronicle the devastating physical fallout. Chronic pelvic injuries from forced contortions, growth halted by restrictive diets to preserve youthful allure, fatal infections from premature violations. Survivors? Scarred for life, many perishing young from complications or what ancients termed soul fractures, akin to today's PTSD. But temple walls weren't the only prisons. Elite households commodified child slaves, trading them like livestock for pleasure, with prices hinging on youth, beauty, and proficiency. Legal contracts unearthed in digs confirm this grim market. Where no stigma attached, it was business as usual. The emotional wreckage, catastrophic. Adult escapees struggled with intimacy, veering between compulsion and aversion, their psyches shattered. Imagine the lifelong torment, flashbacks in quiet moments, trust evaporated, existence a hollow echo. Modern psychology would diagnose complex trauma, but back then, just divine trials. Religion wrapped this horror in sanctity. Priests preached sexual servitude as ultimate devotion, a blessing elevating the chosen. Families beamed with pride at selections, blind or complicit to the brutality unfolding behind temple doors. Economically, a thriving abomination. Archaeological stats hint at 73% mortality among these temple youths, with rituals stretching 6 grueling hours. Wealthy devotees shelled out fortunes for exclusive access, sustaining a millennia-spanning industry of exploitation that funneled riches to the priesthood. Hold on, if that churns your stomach, you're nowhere near prepared for the apex of Egyptian excess, the feast of drunkenness. This infamous bash eclipsed all prior depravities. So outrageous Victorian scholars incinerated manuscripts rather than risk public exposure. What follows makes the child training seem almost tame by comparison. This ritual blended fervent worship with sexual savagery on a societal scale, engulfing the nation in 7 days of unbridled mayhem. Digs and texts confirm the ancients' accounts weren't exaggeration, they were understatement. Before plunging deeper, pause. If your pulse is racing, smash that like button to signal you're in for the ride. And drop a comment. Where are you tuning in from? It's mind-blowing how folks from New York to London unite over history's concealed nightmares. The feast honored Hathor, evolving from a tribute to feminine divinity into what we'd label a humanitarian crisis today. Rooted in myth, the fierce lioness Sekhmet, enraged by humanity, nearly annihilated all. Gods intervened, flooding the land with beer dyed blood red from ochre. She drank, mistaking it for gore, and transformed into benevolent Hathor amid drunken stupor. This legend birthed an annual reenactment, urging every Egyptian to imbibe until possessed by the divine, shedding mortal constraints. Preparations spanned months. Temples brewed vats of potent beer, laced with hallucinogenic lotus or mandrake, inducing visions, voices, and total disinhibition. Festival dawn, society's fabric tore, masters cavorted with slaves in bustling marketplaces. Faithful wives deserted hearths for wandering reveller troops. Children, alas, weren't shielded, exposed to the spectacle, sometimes drawn in as innocent vessels. Texts depict bedlam, inebriated hordes rampaging streets, invading homes to conscript the unwilling. Women endured communal unions, hailed as godly mergers. Men boasted endurance feats amid haze. Violence intertwined, frenzied bites and scratches as sacred stigmata, fatalities from brutal encounters, or crowd crushes in labyrinthine alleys. The theological spin, utterly perverse. Clergy decreed all festival deeds holy, as participants channeled spirits. Assault became communion, harm an offering. Even child involvement, a celestial gift. Twisted logic that normalized atrocity. Foreign envoys recoiled. Mesopotamian reports branded Egyptians elegant barbarians, some nations boycotting visits to dodge moral peril. Hangover, a psychological apocalypse. Many awoke amnesiac, confronting scars and shattered bonds. Families imploded upon truths unearthed. Infants conceived amid chaos bore divine bastard stigma, ostracized. Economy ground to halt, fields fallow, commerce stalled, governance paralyzed for a week. Pharaohs deemed it essential for cosmic equilibrium, a calculated chaos venting yearly tensions. Slaves upending masters, norms inverted, but confined to this outlet. Excavations corroborate. Temple annexes with grooved floors for fluids, restraints hinting at bondage, aligning with lurid descriptions. The unraveling of this sexual edifice accelerated in the Ptolemaic era, as Greek overlords clashed their logical ethos against Egypt's mystic carnality, fracturing both worlds. Ptolemies, foreigners craving legitimacy, partook in rites but balked at excesses. Cleopatra VII, that shrewd queen, curtailed the feast, trimming days, curbing violence and nudity. Priests erupted, alterations provoke divine wrath, pointing to floods, defeats, famines as omens. Cleopatra III navigated tighter, Egyptian zeal versus Roman scrutiny. Solution: clandestine elite orgies, facade of restraint for outsiders. This duplicity eroded trust, fueling unrest. Child exploitation intensified covertly. Trafficking surged to hidden sanctums barred to Romans. Desperation to affirm traditions amid erosion. Societal psyche fractured. Generations groomed for vanished norms suffered identity crises. Cultural whiplash leaving scars. Climax: 30 BCE Roman annexation. Augustus, aghast at temple discoveries, mandated eradication. Erotic murals raised, ritual scrolls torched, defiant priests slain. Architectural sex features demolished or concealed. Temple youths' plight? Heartbreaking. Conditioned solely for service, Many chose death over reinvention. Roman logs note suicides, inability to assimilate, trauma persisted. Underground sects, smuggling rings, revivalist whispers plagued governors for centuries. Romans scrubbed traces, but remnants survived, only for Victorians to entomb them anew in prudery. The 19th century concealment wasn't pharaonic plot, but Victorian hysteria clashing with unearthed realities. Explorers facing explicit tomb art triggered a field-wide meltdown shaping Egyptology for 150 years. Pattern set early. Giovanni Belzoni in 1817, unearthing Seti I's tomb with carnal frescoes, hastily plastered them, his accounts praising pious scenes while erasing the erotic. Auguste Mariette, Antiquities Service founder, amassed private hoards of risque items, never public. Cairo's Egyptian Museum, segregated vaults for male scholars only, barring women and masses. Translators bowdlerized. Eber's papyrus's 40-plus sexual remedies untranslated till 1970s. Destruction rampant. Flinders Petrie confessed in diaries to torching indecent papyri, pulverizing statues of copulating deities. Academia colluded. Universities defunded sexy studies as unseemly. Aspiring pupils deterred or ousted. Journals spiked submissions, even evidence-based. Museums engineered obfuscation. British Museum hoards 2,800-plus Egyptian erotica, mislabeled assorted shards in restricted wings. Louvre's 2019 papyri find, vaulted away. Wikipedia pages on these, edit locked mysteriously. New York's Met, exhibits airbrush explicit panels, originals demand academic vetting and gag orders. Even now, this legacy warps perceptions. TV specials and displays tout politics, faith, art, sidestepping sexuality's centrality. Public inherits a Baudelarized Egypt, stripped of its visceral complexity. These tomb secrets expose how faith morphs into institutionalized horror when sex wields as cosmic lever. For 3 millennia, Egypt systematized child commodification, sanctified violence as devotion, weaponized intimacy for dominance. Thirsty for more veiled atrocities? Tap that emerging video for another erased saga. Subscribe, we'll excavate silenced echoes side by side. They crave resurrection. Now let's delve deeper into the myths fueling these practices. Take Atom's creation, masturbating the universe into being. Semen birthing gods, raw, unapologetic. Or Min's fertility festivals, phallic parades with public arousal to bless crops. Real artifacts like Turin papyrus show cartoonish sex scenes, debunking prudish views. Yet balance, not all was depravity. Love poems reveal tender romance, marriages equitable, divorce easy. Homosexuality, subtle nods like Nyanknum and Khnumhotep's tomb embrace, suggesting acceptance sans labels. On FGM, mummy evidence shows clitoridectomies, perhaps ritual purity, but debated prevalence. Incest, royal sibling unions mimicked Osiris-Isis, but genetic toll evident in Tut's ailments. Clubfoot, malaria vulnerabilities from inbreeding. Child abuse, rare skeletons show fractures, but sexual. Sparse, like Deir el Medina assault accusations. Festival, joyful more than violent, drumming awakenings for communal ecstasy, not mandated rape. Victorians, Secretum housed Pompeii phalli alongside Egyptian erotica, fearing moral corruption. Expanding picture a pharaoh's harem, concubines trained in seductive arts, political pawns. Or everyday aphrodisiacs, lettuce as Viagra, per myths. Rhetorically, what if your child's honor meant temple surrender? Feel the parental betrayal. Suspense, behind sealed tomb doors, what other modifications lurk? Interactive. Ever wondered why Egypt's gods frolic so freely? Comment your theories. This double dive unmasks more. Pharaonic pressures leading to enhancements like inserted prosthetics for afterlife vigor. Debunking. Script exaggerates orgies. Sources lean celebratory, not abusive. Yet horror's real. Physical abuse evidence. Societal openness twisted. Conclusion echoes. History's shadows beckon, join the unveil.